Hello everyone, and welcome. Hope you're ready for some more reading because I've got my book. And shall we begin? If you remember, we're about to talk about the battered child. So obviously this may bring up trauma for anyone who was, abused as a child. So just to warn you, okay? If this makes you uncomfortable, then I'm truly, truly sorry. But please, if you think it might do, then it's probably best you skip this one. And with that warning out the way, I shall begin. The battered child. The battered child is programmed for homicide. This is a child who has been repeatedly beaten in so brutal a manner that skin and bones are broken. What is being recorded in the child and what is being recorded in the parent of this little child at the time of such beating? That's a question, by the way. I may not have gone that clear. In the child are recorded catastrophic feelings of terror, fear, and hatred. The child struggling and thrashing in his nightmare, put yourself in his place, rages inside. If I were as big as you, I would kill you. Here's a shift in position to the psychopathic I'm okay, you're not okay. In the parent is recorded the permission to be cruel, if not to kill, as well as the final points of how. In later life, this person under sufficient stress may give way to these old recordings. He has the desire to kill, which comes from the child, and the permission from the parent, which they then do. Many states have enacted battered child laws which require that physicians who suspect brutality from injuries they treat report these suspicions to the authorities. Excuse me. Start my nose is itching. The question is, what happens next? I would say the prognosis is poor unless the child, by the time he is a pre-adolescent, receives intensive treatment so he can understand the source of his murderous feelings and further understand that despite his past, he too can have a choice about his future. For society to offer less than this to the battered child is to toy with a loaded pistol. Now, I just want to point out that even though this example focuses on a boy, and most psychopaths are boys who grow up to become men, the same position can be applied to women too, who as young girls are probably more likely to be abused than young boys. They too can. This applies for both genders, by the way. Okay? And before you say, James, there's more than two genders, I know. Okay? But I'm just using the two here as an example. And what those boys and girls choose to be when they grow up is a whole different matter. I don't think it really relates to whether they're battered or not. I mean, I'm not a psychiatrist of any sort, really, so you might want to consult an expert on that one. But you know me. I'm fully tolerant. There are, of course, degrees of battering. I believe strongly that all physical abuse of children produces replayable feelings of violence. The injunction recorded is, when all else fails, hit. The final court of appeals is violence. I do not believe in spankings, with one exception, when a child is too little. Sorry, actually, let me read this sentence again, it just confused me. I'll probably make more sense when I complete it. I do not believe in spankings, with one exception, when the child is too little to comprehend danger. A spanking may be the only way to condition him from going into the street. It is most effective in this situation if it is not used daily for non-dangerous infractions like spilling the milk or hitting the sister. It is not possible to teach non-violence with violence. Now, as I've said in previous videos, spanking is illegal in a lot of countries. And I did put a big list up of most of them. Yes, I am aware that I missed the A from Albania, by the way. So if you're that person that keeps commenting on my mistakes, yes, I bloody well know. As I said before, I personally will not condone spanking. I will not condone it in children. As the book says, it is not possible to teach non-violence with violence. Parents Being more human than not, however, occasionally swing out at their children. The themes in both parent and child can be talked about with parent, adult, child, so that something constructive may come from the incident. How to keep it from happening again, for instance. It is important for parents to see physical punishment as a takeover by the child, and not as a positive attribute under the healing of discipline. Bruno Bettelheim says, let's stop for a moment and perform the simple exercise of actually defining the word discipline. If you go to Webster's, that's the American dictionary people by the way, you'll find it has the same root as disciple. Now disciple isn't somebody you beat over the head, although some cults probably do that. Although I personally would not recommend it, because if you do have someone following you like a disciple, when you start hitting them, they probably leave you. Now a disciple isn't someone you beat over the head. It is somebody who apprentices himself to a master and learns his craft by working at the same vocation. This is the concept of discipline. So if you show your children when you're angry you beat, it's a good way to get things. They're going to copy that. Sorry, let me read that again. When you're angry you beat. It's a good way to get things. They're going to copy that though. And then you complain about violence in our cities. Now this is something I've heard before. I'm not going to get too far into it because, you know, socio-economic problems drives most violence and crimes. But of course, people who were grown up to be beaten probably grow up to do the same because now they're big enough to hit and not get beaten back themselves. I mean, this is just me, of course. If you disagree, and I don't really care. I mean, actually, if you do disagree, call me an idiot in the comments, alright? Because it drives engagement with the channel. That means more people will see my cities too. Or my videos too, I should say, not cities. Okay. The R word's being used. Okay, that's the end of that little chapter. Now, the next chapter is called Teaching Parent, Adult, Child to the R word. I'm not going to say that word because it's a horrible word and we shouldn't use it now, and we know better now. But at the time, people didn't know better. It's just a word they casually used. Now, I know what you're thinking, James. Why are you so worried about offending people? Because I'll tell you why, because I think it's nice to be nice, you know? Yes, technically we are free to offend. We have that freedom of speech. At least I do in my country, and I'm sure most of you are watching in countries where you have that same freedom. But it doesn't hurt to be nice to people. And sometimes words hurt a lot. And they can often carry connotations that can cause serious psychological problems in people. And when it comes to the R word, which is basically a way of saying really, 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 really stupid, you ever wondered how people feel when you call them that? I mean, if you have called that person that, I don't recommend you do so because it's a horrible thing to say, but if you ever have used that word in your life, you ever wondered how the other person felt? You should be, as I always say, you should treat people the way you want to be treated. If you don't want someone to call you the R word, you shouldn't call them the R word. Not that I'm saying any of you lot would, because I think most of the people watching this are good people who do things who do good things just purely because they want to do good things, not for any particular reason. So, with that said, let's go back to it. Teaching parent, adult, child to the R word. When we recognise that all children struggle under the load of the not okay, we begin to appreciate what an oppressive burden is carried by the R-worded child. He not only feels not okay, he is in fact less okay in intellectual endowment than other children. His mental R-wordation is frequently is accompanied by other physical handicaps and visible deformities, which reflect from other responses that underline his low self-estimate. I've read that completely wrong. I'm going to start again, and you're going to see this mistake because I think it's worth saying. Let's start again. His mental R-wordation frequently is accompanied by other physical handicaps and visible deformities, which reflect from other responses that underline his low estimate of himself. In competition with other children, his position is continually reaffirmed, and the acting out of boiling emotions multiplies his problems. He in fact has difficulty using the defective computer he has, because it is further impaired by the continuing subversive influence of the nut cocaine. Now, before I carry on, and I will, when he talks about physical handicaps and physical deformities, he could also be talking about the people who are born with Down syndrome. Down syndrome is a condition which causes people to not quite develop as fully adult humans. I believe it's due to a missing chromosome. I'm not 100% sure of that. I had an uncle with Down syndrome. Quite sad, really. He was my uncle on my dad's side of the family. My dad adored him growing up, which is quite surprising, really, because I think my dad said to me once, if it weren't for his brother, he probably would have had negative opinions of people like that, like most society does. Sadly, I mean, attitudes have improved immensely over the years, but in the past it wasn't very good, because it was mostly down to my grandmother to look after, because my granddad, bless him, great granddad, absolute terrible husband and parent, just wasn't there most of the time. It's quite sad, really. So it was mostly down to my nan, and she became very protective of him for obvious reasons. Eventually they sent him to this school, but what turns out, at this special school, they were just tying him up all day and just leaving him there. So he wasn't actually learning a damn thing. And of course that probably led to other problems. It led to my nan being even more protective of him in the future. It's quite sad, really, because he could barely walk and he couldn't speak. Now nowadays you see most people with Down syndrome can speak. They can walk. Sometimes I wonder if my uncle would have been able to live that life if he was born, 30 years later. I mean, not that it really... I mean, it does cause problems, but it doesn't overly hinder you, because I've met Down syndrome people who have passed their GCSE exams. All of them, they're all A's. I met 2 of them once. Do you know how many GCSEs I passed? 1. That was it. 1, I failed the rest. And I've got a full set of chromosomes. On with the book. Look, all I'm saying is, people, okay, just be nice. Love and care for your fellow human beings, because you don't know what they're going through. And often, people who get the R word slur used against them, or obviously people who are just born with a disability, that means that life is harder for them than it is for everyone else. His inability to hold his own in a society of comparison and competition will sometimes create conflicts requiring institutional care, in which this competition is minimised, yet his emotional turmoil continues to torment him and those around him. The effectiveness of psychotherapy with the almost said it there with the R worded is a much debated subject. Almost said it, I got away with it though. I'll stop myself. Glad about that. Sometimes you get carried away when you start reading these things. There is very little in psychiatric literature about treating the R worded. There's probably a fair bit more now. I don't actually know, but I imagine there is. If you go to your local independent bookshop and ask them, they probably have one. And I do recommend your local independent bookshop, not the heartless online retailers. Group treatment, however, has had little trial, which is probably untrue now, because we know a lot more now than what we do. Traditional techniques employed in most residential programs include kindly parental control, structured time, avoidance of excessive competition, and opportunity for a relative success with jobs he is able to do. Such techniques have been reasonably successful in providing a secure and sometimes happy life for the R-worded. These techniques, however, have been made up mostly of parent-child transactions. See, this is what I said before, see, with the right care and upbringing, even those who are suffering from handicaps in life can go on to achieve a lot more than what I ever will. Actually, this is halfway through a sentence, so let's start this again, shall we? These techniques, however, have been made up mostly of parent-child transactions, having but limited effectiveness in helping the youngster to develop inner control by strengthening his adult, A continual problem for the residential staff has always been the time-consuming business of dealing with emotional episodes. People who work in care do great work. Let that not be said. People who run them aren't so great, because I'll tell you a little story. My uncle, the Down syndrome uncle I had, his name was Alistair, by the way. You never call him Al or Ali. My nan would go mental if you said that. His name was Alistair. I remember after my grandparents passed on, he ended up in this little care home in Littlehampton. It was great. But one day, it got taken over by this different company. And this company decided that all the care that they had was costing money, so they didn't bother. And my uncle, he needed to be fed, because he needed to be fed little bits in little bits, otherwise his stomach would just reject food and he'd have problems. But due to having not enough staff now, and management deciding that this was just too much bother, they decided he would feed himself, and he ended up in hospital twice. My dad almost murdered that man. He wanted to. One time he went to complain and he locked himself in his office and hid, because he knew he had done wrong. I mean, honestly, as far as I'm concerned, I think that care home in particular was trying to kill him. Not the staff, they were doing great, but they were limited to what they do, and they actually lost most of their great staff because they went on to other places where they were actually appreciated and they could give proper care. And eventually we got and transferred to a place in Worthing, which was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I won't name it because I don't know it. So I don't know what the name is, and it's not on... You can't find it on Google Maps or anything, probably because they don't want people to know it's there. But they were great. They had him doing everything on his own. He had his own TV in his room. They even had him doing almost everything. Or everything that you could possibly do. It was great. It was great. Unfortunately, he passed away eventually, as Down syndrome people do. He lived a lot longer though than any doctor said he would, so I'll give him that. And the care home was great because you could see the staff were generally heartbroken by his death. And you saw most of them at the funeral, and even a few from his old care home who actually cared about him turned up as well. It's a nice moment. Well, as nice as a funeral can be. My dad in the end thanked them by buying them a bench for their back garden so staff could sit down on it, which I thought was great. It's one of those reinforced plastic ones. You probably see them in parts now where it's not wood, it's just reinforced plastic that looks like painted wood. They last a lot longer and they require less maintenance. They appreciated that. We're going back to the book now. In Sacramento, a new program of teaching parent, adult, child to do R-worded, almost done it, didn't mean to, was undertaken in January 1966 by Dennis Marks, a paediatrician, who is the director of Laurel Hills, not to be confused with Laurel Hill, which I almost did, his recently completed 100-bed residential centre for the R-word. Now, the reason I'm constantly saying R-word, okay, because I want to read the book as it is, and I also want to show that we don't use that word anymore. And I don't really know. And while I have said this is most likely referencing to mostly Down syndrome people, I don't actually know. I mean, back in the olden times, other difficult children may have had the same label put upon them when it probably wasn't needed. This Marks, who is a member of the board of directors of the Institute for Transactional Analysis, came to feel that parent, adult, child was a system that was so easily understandable that it could be taught to the residents of his centre. The age range is from 6 months to 47 years and represents the full range of the R-worded people. Those who attend the parent, adult, child groups are in the 30 to 75 IQ range. Now, just like to say that IQ is meaningless, by the way. Some people who claim to have massively high IQs are absolute idiots. I'm not going to name names, but I think you mostly know who I mean. I'll tell you now, anyone who brags about having a high IQ is most likely an absolute idiot. 1/3 have significant to profound physical handicaps, and many have compulsive disorders. 1/3 are privately placed, and 2/3 are referred by public agencies such as welfare departments and occasionally the probation department. They come from private homes, foster homes, and occasionally state hospitals or juvenile detention centres. In terms of chronological age, most are teenagers and young adults. The presence of helplessly handicapped children necessitates the exclusion of children who cannot control aggressive behaviour. The open nature of the facility, which has no locked doors, also requires the exclusion of children who are either extremely destructive or severely antisocial, or those intent on running away. The structure does, however, is to give exceedingly active and noisy children considerable freedom and acceptance. The two most urgent problems, therefore, are how to calm the severely agitated, combated child, and how to prevent the child from running away. In these two situations particularly, Marks reports considerable success through the use of transactional analysis. Okay, this is it, Jim. And that, people, is where we finished the book today. Hope you've learned something. We will be going back to the mentally and physically handicapped in this book next time. Now, I know I have said quite a few things and not read a whole lot, but that's why you watch these videos, isn't it? I mean, anyone can just... if you just want to hear the book read, you should buy the audio book or even buy the book yourself and read it. But you come to me because you get your personal experience. You also get my added experiences from all of this. So, until next time, people, take care of yourselves, okay? Bye.